Someone we would like to see back in France in the near future, of course, Kylian Mbappé, not chosen by Didier Deschamps for this set of international fixtures. And it is no exaggeration to say that the talk about that, the whys, the wherefores, which Deschamps hasn't really explained, have been taking over French media in recent days. Of course, a couple of games starting with the Thursday night one against Israel. I mean, has Deschamps handled this well, Nicky? Because he's kind of left, we talked about questions hanging in the air. I mean, he said on a number of occasions when he could have said, oh, okay, Kylian and I have talked and he's not playing for the moment. Deschamps said, it was my choice to leave him out. He wanted to come, but I decided it was best for the team. Asked to elaborate on that, he said, it's what's best for the team. Mm-hmm. I mean, Deschamps has had a few doubts over him about the way he's handled star players. I mean, this is the ultimate in that, because this is not just one of the biggest players in the world. It's his captain. Now, clearly there are doubts over Mbappé and the way he's fitting in at Real Madrid at the moment. But if we're strictly talking about France and what's the best for France, is Deschamps handling it in the way that you want as a France supporter?
I think that's a really tricky question to answer. I think that there's a gut instinct to what you just, the quotes you just referenced, where is it helpful to say he wanted to be here, I've said no, and it's the best for the team, without clarifying? I think, of course, phrasing it in that way, I'm not going to tell you any more, this is what's best for the team, is going to lead to speculation. But inevitably, that's going to lead to speculation.
And he knows that, surely.
Yeah, and I can see that being unhelpful for both the team and for Mbappé. On the other hand, what other options do you have in Deschamps' position?
Without breaching confidentiality, you mean?
Well, exactly. One option would have been to not address it at all, which leads to speculation. Another option would have been to leave it ambiguous or blame the player, which first of all may be false, because the fact that he's taking ownership of it, I think, suggests it is his decision. And second of all, would lead to criticism of the player. And the third thing, which you didn't reference just there, which I think Deschamps did do his did take his responsibility to try to protect the player, was there is reporting in Sweden in the last few days, which we need to be very cautious about, because it is very much denied by the player extremely aggressively, and we have absolutely zero information on it outside of the Swedish reporting. But there has been reporting that there is a rape case in Sweden in which he has been investigated, and that's as far as has been reported. Again, Mbappé has completely denied this, and I think we should all treat that as a very, very unsubstantiated report at this stage, because we have nothing more on it. But the fact is that story is out there, and you also have reporting separate to that Kylian Mbappé has one cited source, and this in the French press, saying he's been having some mental health issues. And this is all out there and all completely unsubstantiated in any way that we can make any sort of sensible comment on. And at the same time, that is clearly part of the picture of everything that Kylian Mbappé has to deal with. Mbappé has that to deal with, whether or not it's true, whether all of that is false, he still has to live with that reporting. And I think that what Deschamps has tried to do is be explicit that it's not about this. Because he did say
he said
that.
It's not the off-field stuff,
yeah,
didn't he?
He said it's not the off-field stuff. And so he's done the part of trying to protect him from that, whilst he's tried to balance the needs of his team and trying to take forward his own project as manager. And I think that's a very delicate balance for a manager to try to get right. So do I think he could have handled it better? Maybe. Do I think that phrase of basically, I'm not going to tell you, is the best way to say it? Probably not. But do I think it's an incredibly difficult spot for a manager to juggle all of those things at once? Yeah, I actually do. So I have a lot of empathy for him in that spot. I think it's complicated.
I guess if we go back to the Mbappé half of it, David, what's the view in Spain about it? Because, of course, they've already have the situation where they had a superstar French striker who had his issues with the national team. So you could say they're better prepared than most to deal with it. But, of course, he's still trying to make an impression. There's an enormous amount of pressure on him as they try and get that technical balance right between him and Vinicius and Bellingham, and they've all come in for their turns of criticism this season in Madrid, haven't they?
Yeah.
Where is Mbappé at the moment?
I don't think he quite has that love that the players you've mentioned do. I think when Benzema got frozen out of the French setup, Real Madrid opened their arms and said, look, we'll look after you, just play well for us. Don't worry about international football, you'll be fitter, you'll be stronger, do your best for us. He did exactly that, and he became the best striker in the world in that period, for my money. Vinny has obviously had so many issues on so many different levels, from the racism to, I just think that sometimes with his little bit of selfishness when it comes as a team player. But again, Real Madrid put their arms around him, made him feel loved, and then he settled as well. And then Bellingham, and this is perhaps a problem for Mbappé, because the superstar that comes before him is the absolute perfect specimen in terms of footballer and person.
Who they love so much.
Already.
So much.
Already, because of the way he carries himself. You don't hear a bad word about Jude Bellingham.
I mean, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Like how from about 2 or 3 months into his spell at Real Madrid, and Bellingham has a love that maybe even Cristiano Ronaldo never had. Like Ronaldo had respect, but did he really have love from the Real Madrid fans? I can't think of a player who's really chimed with those fans like Jude Bellingham is. So whereas in our minds we might say, okay, intellectually, the arrival of Mbappe was always going to change Bellingham's role. We're ready for that. Are those fans ready for that?
That's the thing. And look, Bellingham has no blots on his copybook. He's not going to be spotted out at Madrid club at 4 or 5 in the morning. He's not going to be maybe sacking off some team training to go and do a PR juncture or anything. He is 100% committed to the cause, and that feeds across to the fans. And Real Madrid fans love that. The Real Madrid fans don't sing every legend's name. People view as a legend, but there's certain players that they will. And Bellingham's just entering that kind of, I'm going to compare him to a Guti stratosphere, where he's just so unanimously loved and protected. And Mbappé, just this week, he was with Hakimi, pictured playing video games, and there was a shisha pipe in the background. That's a sort of thing that doesn't appear on a Bellingham picture. That is the sort of thing that doesn't happen to Jude Bellingham. And he's just seen as this perfect guy. And that is the thing that Mbappé is dealing with right now. Because he's always going to be compared to how Jude Bellingham has arrived at the club and carried himself and executed everything at that club.
I mean, that's such an interesting thing, isn't it? When you think about Kylian Mbappé, when he first arrived on the European football scene as a teenager with Monaco, it felt like, he was multilingual. He was quite a polished product as well as a great footballer. That doesn't feel like it's the case anymore. Whereas Bellingham, as David says, his management of his image while retaining the common touch is absolutely expert, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so complicated to talk about individuals when you haven't got, and we don't have the insight into what's happening in their day to day. But there's this narrative, I think, in France about Mbappé, where because he stayed so long in Paris, he was coddled and everything was done around him and everything was made exactly how he wanted to keep him there longer. And then Deschamps gives him the captain's armband for France, which again is just more coddling, more prizing him and telling him he's the best boy, basically. And then he goes to Madrid, and suddenly he's not anymore. And suddenly it's all been ripped out from underneath him. And Madrid can be a very unforgiving place, actually.
Yes.
The media there can be extremely unforgiving, and we've seen plenty of the past would-be Galacticos that have gone there and have struggled with that. So there's nothing unique about that, actually. I come back to this. I think it was in Ligue, the suggestion that I think I've got the quote in front of me on our running order, call it what you want, but Kylian has a mental problem for several months from an unnamed source, which to me is really irresponsible reporting. I'll be honest, because I think that's putting something out into the public domain without context, because we don't even know where it's come from, that's speculating on someone's mental health. And if it's true, then having someone unnamed saying that publicly isn't going to help Mbappé at all. And if it's not, then it's clearly irresponsible for obvious reasons. I think we have always had this problem. It's not new. We've always had this problem with footballers, where because they are rich and successful, we have to treat them like they're not real human beings who have difficulties in their lives. And I wish that people would join the dots between that thought and the very real issues we've seen plenty of former pros go through, and we've seen even current pros talk about. Like Gigi Buffon talked about it very well during his career. There have been other footballers who talked about it very well during their career about going through depression and struggles. And I don't know if any of this is true about Mbappé now. Of course I don't, because I'm not in Mbappe's ear. But you have this put out in the public domain now, and it's now part of our discourse, whether we want it to be there or not, which is why I said it's not reporting I feel particularly enthusiastic about.
I guess that the question is, whatever difficulties he might be going through at the moment, it doesn't feel as if either Mbappé as captain or Deschamps as coach have a mastery of leading France at the moment. I guess this is the problem. To me, if we're talking about it on purely a football level, I think with the current state of leadership, and I've said this before, there is no chance of France winning the next World Cup. It's just not going to happen. And not just because of the competition. Now, we've heard both Jules Koundé, David, and Ibrahima Konate say this week, we hope that Kylian gets the armband when he comes back. Now, that's a really interesting way of putting it. That suggests that there's a level of doubt, in the dressing room at least, if not in the mind of Didier Deschamps. Now, I've said before, I think they made a really poor choice in appointing Kylian Mbappé as captain in the first place. I think it's obvious he should be the captain of that team, and it's Mike Maignan.
Agreed again.
But is this just another thing for Deschamps to have to deal with? Is the course of action that he needs to take something that will cause even more strife for his star player and for the team, and create this another huge media narrative?
That's the thing. He simply cannot remove that captain armband now. It just looks even worse. You stick it out, and I do wonder. I remember the last international break. Myself and you were on, and we were a bit troubled by Mbappé not being in the camp when he's just been handed the captain's armband. And I think we made the point that he's just been made captain. This is your first camp as captain. You've had all the issues with Griezmann, what's happened about the captaincy there, and then obviously Maignan as well. Many of the players expected him to get it. He didn't, and that wasn't handled too particularly well by Deschamps as well.
Not at all.
So that's where a lot of the trouble started for me. I think that kind of sets the tone. I was wanting Mbappé to be in that camp and say, look, I'm the captain. Look, I know things haven't been smooth right now. Could have been better with Griezmann. Could have been better with Maignan. But let's get together now. Let's pull together for, the greater good of restoring France at the top of world football again. Didn't do that. He wasn't there. And this is another camp that he's not at. And I agree with you. I don't see them in any way winning anytime soon. I think there's going to be a lot more drama on the way, if anything. I think that is absolutely guaranteed. What type? I'm not too sure. But you mentioned Koundé, Konate there. I wonder how many players in that dressing room right now, heads are thinking, should have been Maignan. We wouldn't have had this drama. We just don't need this drama right now. Is this the Kylian circus once again? Is this the Kylian PR surrounding a camp again? Yeah. And that's the big issue that Deschamps has, managing that as well as the individual himself. There's going to be another 25, 26 players at that camp that he has to concern with.